listed on the website, where you can also find an audio
exhibition and the
this program, we encourage speakers to provide a brief verbal visual description of themselves and their surroundings. So I'll demonstrate. My name is Rosette. I am a Black person. I have gold circular glasses and dreads braided into ponytails, and I'm wearing an orange shirt. And I'm sitting in the Discovery Center, and there is a screen above my head with various live lessons. Now I'm going to introduce our panelists. We're going to go this direction. Start with Angela Garbes, who is the author of the Principal Paper, Mothering as Social Change. Next, we have Mercedes Snyder, midwife and owner of Something Beautiful Midwifery. We have Dila Perera, Executive Director of Open Arms Perinatal Services. And next to me, Kaleigh MacDaniels, Program Officer, Global Health at Dila and Melinda Gates Foundation. For more information on tonight's speakers, you can visit discovergates.org/importance of care. All for being here. We've gone through those introductions. Everybody ready to get to it? Yeah, all right. Here we go. Okay, great. So, during this panel, we're going to be talking about family planning, prenatal care, support for Black and Indigenous people of color or BIPOC families, and what it means to practice self-care. So I would like to start off by having each of you share a little bit about the work you do and how it relates to these topics. And again, we're going to start with you, Angela.
Thanks, Melinda. Thank you all for being here. My name is Angela Garbes. I am a Filipino woman with a pretty good tan right now because I just came back from vacation. I've got glasses on, I have my natural gray hair, and I'm wearing my new terracotta lipstick. And I live in Seattle. I'm an author and speaker and a mother. I was just telling Mercedes before I got up here that how I got into writing. I actually worked as a food writer for years. And the fact that I am now writing about care and mothering primarily and writing books about them is one of the great surprises of my life. But it all happened because I had a child and I had to navigate the healthcare system as a woman of color with a lot of questions. And then I had to navigate being a parent who works outside of the home full time and who was also trying to breastfeed, which was at least an 8-hour-a-day job. And I had a lot of questions. And, my work as a food writer is very informed by who gets left out of stories, whose culture and food do we value, whose meals are willing to pay $20 for, but whose meals are not willing to pay more than $8 for. So I have always wanted to write myself into stories and to write my community and people of color. And that's sort of where it all started. I had a lot of questions about breast milk. I wrote an article that went viral, and I was able to write a book about pregnancy and basically taught myself how to do science research. And I wondered why arguably the most essential biological human process, turns out we don't know that much about it because we haven't valued it scientifically or culturally. So I wrote a book called Like a Mother, which came out in 2018. And I just released a book last year called Essential Labor, Mothering is Social Change, which really looks at, just to lay it all on the table, I believe that care work is the only real work humans have to do on Earth. If you never had a job and all you do is just take care of yourself, keep yourself alive, do your people, I think that's a life well lived. And so I'm going to stop now. That's my work. I write about care work and mothering and See you on the streets of Seattle.
Thank you, thank you. Sure, applause if you want, please. All right, Mercedes.
Hi, my name is Mercedes, and I am a licensed midwife, or Canadian midwife. I practice out of Auburn, Washington, so I have my own clinic. I mostly attend to families via a clinic, home birth, or freestanding birth center birth. I am an African American woman, and I have gold earrings on. I have a multicolored sweater on, dark blue, light blue, some green is in there, a little bit of red and yellow, and some black pants. Midwifery and how that clues into what's going on today. Care is really important to me. Loving on people is really important to me. And I knew from a really young age that I wanted to be involved in the whole process of pregnancy, of labor, and of birth. And me having kids as well really highlighted where I wanted to go in life with that, experiencing a midwife. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. That's it right there. And just being able to inform people on all their choices, you know, involving having a baby, growing a family, what labor can look like. It doesn't have to look like one way. We don't have to automatically think that when we're pregnant for the first time or for subsequent times that it needs to go a specific way because your auntie had it this way or your grandmother did it this way, that you can write your own story. So that is one thing that I love about the whole care and how I fit in. So, thank you.
Thank you. Dila.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dila Perera. I'm the Executive Director of Open Arms Perinatal Services, which is born and raised in Seattle. We've existed for 25 years, and during those 25 years, we've provided services to over 4,000 pregnant and birthing people free of charge. And that ranges from birth doulas to lactation peer counselors to long-term counselors that visit the family until the baby's second birthday, as well as childbirth education. And I'm a former doula myself. I'm also the mom of a 12-year-old. And I think at this point in my life, I'm much better at doulaing the doulas who doula the doulas. So I'm a lot more separated from the work. I'm not on my hands and knees as much, but I can tell you I've had some sleepless nights myself. For any of you who know me, I have been in love with everything related to reproductive health and anatomy ever since I was 5 years old. And I worked in global health. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I worked a lot on family planning and HIV prevention, and I worked a lot with HIV discordant couples and work that was funded actually by the Gates Foundation. And really my absolute love, though, is working with people who are pregnant and birthing and parenting and their babies, because I cannot think of a moment more enriching than making a difference in that little community's and world's life at that moment. So that's why I'm here. So it's nice to meet you all. Oh, and my markers. Sorry, I forgot that part. I am a Sri Lankan woman who is not at my actual normal skin color because I've been in Seattle too long. I should be about 4 shades darker than I am right now. I'm wearing a gold blouse and a necklace with tassels, and I have black-brown hair that is just past my shoulders. Nice to meet you.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. All right, Kaleigh.
Thank you. I am Kaleigh MacDaniels. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a white woman with brown hair, brown eyes, a gray sweater, and I have lots of tattoos, but you can't see all of them. And I am, first and foremost, I think what's relevant to this conversation is I'm a mom to a 15-month-old daughter. So I'm navigating life as a new parent, although I see newer parents in the room, and I have a lot of respect for you bringing your kids here, or soon-to-be parents as well. And in addition, I am a program officer on the family planning team at the Gates Foundation. And specifically, I work on introducing a relatively new contraceptive called Cyanopress. And it's novel in that women can self-inject it. So we're putting the power in the hands of women. So if they want to use an injectable, they can do it themselves and they don't have to go back to a provider every 3 months. So we're hopefully breaking down barriers to access and making it as easy as possible for women who want to contracept to do so. And excited and humbled to be here with these women. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, thank you all so much. I'm going to try not to get too emotional up in here. I was really going to say all these things about care, and already I'm feeling very moved by just the things you've been sharing. And so we have some questions we're going to ask everyone, and we also have individual questions. So we're going to kind of bop around a little bit through this process as we go through this panel. And you know what, Kaleigh, I'd like to start with you, because you just talked about this device. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about it. Like, how does it work and what does it look like? And if you could just give us a little insight, I'm really fascinated by it.
Some more. It's actually on display in the exhibit, so anyone that wants to go see it can. It's a little device that's about this big with a little needle. And I think this is what I get the most excited about is right now, if you want to use an injectable contraceptive, like even in the US, it's a needle that's about this big and it's going into your muscle. So it's an intramuscular. This new product is subcutaneous. So it's a little tiny needle that you can do yourself either in your stomach or your thigh. And I told my fellow panelists that I was just in Malawi last week where I got to observe a woman who was self-injecting. And it was just quite remarkable to see, you know, it's this thing that's often medicalized, like I can't do an injection. That's what a provider needs to do. But we're really breaking that down and we're empowering women and giving them the choice and the ability to do it themselves. And it's quite remarkable.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, we're going to go this way. All right, so Dila, your organization, Open Arms, offers free services to birthing people in King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. And so what are some of the things that you've seen that can impact the care birthing people receive?
So our organization was founded by people from multiple communities, but we are a majority BIPOC organization. Over 95% of the people that work for Open Arms identify as BIPOC. Over 95% of our families are BIPOC. So we are very proud of that because one of the things that we believe is that someone of and from the same community is the best person to help provide care. And so I can tell you, given who we serve and the fact that all of them are lower income and could otherwise not afford the services we provide, is that the structural racism that we see and that many of us who may have given birth in this room may have experienced ourselves is unfortunately alive and well and shows up in the care that our families receive. So the care, even the care itself, can be defined differently and manifest differently based on how someone lives and their skin color and their race, ethnicity, and the languages they speak and don't speak. And I would say that that is one of the biggest single things that we see as impacting the care. And then also I would say on another part of that is the level of support that our families have. Many of our families have a partner with them when they're giving birth, many don't. Many are coming to us because they don't have someone in their lives that they can trust to be there in that very, very vulnerable moment. And that's the role that we play.
All right, thank you. So, Mercedes, you spoke a little bit about being a doula, and I know you're also a birthing assistant. You've been a birthing assistant and a midwife as well. So what has serving in those roles taught you about care?
Ooh, it's taught me a lot. Being a person that has received care, having children of my own, being a person that has been able to, support people in having birth in different settings, in the hospital, in a freestanding birth center, at home, not yet outside. I'm still waiting for that. Still waiting. It's really, to me, opened my eyes as far as how the system has failed us with our medical education. Because I've watched many providers that I respect, some that I am growing to learn. Just the way that they handled clients as far as giving them information, withholding information, the way that they just presented different things as far as when someone was going through this absolutely life-changing event. That has really shaped me as a provider and continuing to shape me, because I'm not perfect. But it's taught me that we just need to do better. And I'm not even sure that in the next 100 years we'll be able to do as much better as I would like. But as far as if we can bring providers together, if we can bring OBs together with midwives, and we could bring CNMs, so mid-level care people that are in the hospital, all together in our learning experiences, how helpful that would be, because there's quite a bit of unspoken and spoken animosity when it comes to how care is given, really honestly in any setting. Because in the hospital, me being a doula and learning at the same time on how to be an out-of-hospital midwife, I had some thoughts on, I don't like the way that you're talking to this person, or, a provider walking out of the room and I'm, like, hey, it's really great they gave you this part of the information. When they come back in, here's something else you can ask about, just so then they can be more well-informed. But then on the flip side, I think a lot of the education is also being driven by insurance companies and policies, hospital policies, even community standard policies that as midwives we are influenced or encouraged to follow, where I think sometimes providers are like, I would really love to give all of my clients X, Y, and Z option, but in order to save myself, in order to make this more generalized because I don't know what their insurance will cover, or in order to not have my name look bad in the community because I wanted to serve this person, I'm gonna have to save myself. I'm gonna have to cut this information in a way that is positive for myself but not beneficial for the individual that is going through this life-changing journey. So that's what I've learned. There's just, we could do better. We could do so much better, but I don't know how long or how to start that or when that would actually happen.
Well, maybe part of starting it is having conversations like this. Right. So thank you. All right, Angela, how has your understanding of care evolved through your experience of being a mother?
Yeah, I think I was fortunate and privileged enough to grow up and not really see how much work and hard labor care was. My mother worked full-time outside of the home, and we also had dinner every night together as a family. And I was like really sheltered in that sense of like, I had chores to do, but it didn't really occur to me how much work she was doing. And it was really only when I, honestly, like when I became pregnant with my first daughter, where I was like, how did she do any of this? Right? And then also, with my spouse and I were sort of naive, like we had the baby and then we were like, we have to pay for childcare until she's 6, like until she can go to school. Like it was a very, I realized how hard it is to care, especially if you're not an extremely well-resourced or financially stable person. And I would say that the experience of becoming a mother just fully radicalized me in that way, and understanding that everyone deserves care, quality care, and care should not be dependent on having a job to prove your worth. All of those things. And as I said, navigating healthcare systems and realizing, as Mercedes was saying, that a lot of decisions are not sadly made with the patient's best interest in care in mind, that there are other forces at play. So yeah, and then being a mother and doing this work and realizing that American capitalism runs on domestic labor, free domestic labor performed by mostly women and mothers, just as much as it does like quote unquote professional work. And realizing that, even from a purely capitalist point of view, birthing people are providing the next generation of workers and consumers. And so we should be valued and taken care of. So that's sort of the evolution where I'm at. And as I said, I think we should be paid to do care work. I think we should all receive, well, we could just do away with money is actually what I'd prefer since we made that up. But I think we should find ways to really value care work in the same way that we value quote unquote professional work.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're talking about caregiving tonight, and we're talking about, offering care, but sometimes I know even from my own personal experience, receiving care is not so easy. And so I wonder what recommendations you might have for how to better receive care when it's offered. And Dila, we'll start with you.
I'm just laughing because I'm thinking if anyone who knows me is watching this, they want to know how to answer this question. I, like probably many of us, am famous for being difficult when it comes to receiving help. And I think that one of the things that I've learned, especially because I've had a couple people lately say to me, Dila, just take the damn help, is that when you get to the point when someone is saying that, just let them help you. So I would say that one of the biggest things is to just be a gracious receiver. And I think actually, especially women are socialized to feel like we're supposed to somehow do it all. And we feel guilty when we feel like a ball is going to drop and it's out of our control. And we think we have to catch that ball. And if it drops, that's on us. And so I think learning to graciously receive and to pause in that 1 minute or 1 second before saying no to help is a skill in and of itself.
Kaleigh.
I think I don't have any great advice about how to receive care, but I do, something you said, and I'm sure this is a visual that most people have heard, but you have many balls in the air, and some of them are glass and some of them are plastic, and so you just have to know which ones are glass, because those are the ones that are going to break when you drop them. And so I think as you're thinking about caring for yourself, you have to know what your balls are and what you're willing to let fall, and what's glass to you and what you need to hold close to your heart. Maybe not exactly answering the question, but Dila's comment just kind of made me think about that.
That was a great answer. Yeah. Indeed, right. For someone who didn't have an answer, you came up with something real good there. That was great. All right, Angela, how about you?
I am someone who I can identify with what Dila said, but I'm very proud to say that change is possible, and I have evolved into someone who just takes the damn help now. And there's two things that helped me get there. One is I try to be as generous with myself as I would be with anyone else. Like it's easy for us to tell other people, no, you should take the help, right? But it's hard to, like I would tell any of my friends or any of you here to do that. And I feel like I can't say that to someone if I'm not doing that for myself. And I deserve that same generosity. And then the other thing I think is like, I don't know, I think of it as like the tab is open. Like someone helps me, right? That's because they want to. And one day I'll be able to help them. It goes around. It's not like a zero-sum thing. And no one, if they really matter in your life, is keeping track.
All right, Mercedes.
To piggyback off the latter that you were saying, I feel like sometimes it's feeling like a burden, right? And So trying to think about when someone is offering you support or is offering you help, it's because they want to. So you're not a burden in that particular moment in time. You might be in another time, but you're not in that specific moment in time. And so just, graciously receive and be like, okay, they want to help me. That's why they asked. That's why they offered. That's why we're here in this space together. And just be okay with saying yes more than you say no.
Fantastic. All right, so Mercedes, you're great. You're doing great. So you talked about being a parent. So I wonder what kind of conversations you might have had with your kid about care. Do you talk about it, and what do those conversations sound like?
Oh, what do they sound like? They sound interesting. So I have 5 kids, and they're ranging from the age of 15 down to 7. And we do often actually talk about care, just because of what I do. One of the biggest things that I always try to tell my kids is know what you want. Because if you know what you want, then it's hard for you to be swayed to do something else. And so if you want a tooth pulled, I don't know why someone would want a tooth pulled, unless they had pain or something like that. Then go in there, and even if they're like, that's not protocol, or that might not be covered, or this, that, and the other, then you can be like, if you're not gonna do it, then I need to find somebody else that will, kind of thing. So then you can get what it is that you need. Because if you walk in, you're like, man, my tooth really hurts. And they're like, well, these are the options, but this is all we can give you, then maybe they won't bring up that we do have a discount program, that, well, we could do this way, and maybe we could have you come in for an extra visit, and then it'll get covered, or just, this is the cash pay. And you're like, oh, it's actually $300 cheaper than what I thought it was gonna be. Just knowing what you want, so then that's what you get.
The tooth was a great example there. All right, so Dila, so here, one of the things that's been great about this program to me is it's like seeing parents come in and like seeing all the little ones is like been such a joy. So Dila, I want, oftentimes when you're a new parent, you like need support, like you need care. And so what are some things that people can do to help new parents, like the ones who are here?
Okay, some of you with strollers can shout out answers to this question.
Oh, yeah, you can.
I actually compared answers with my fellow panelists on this. And I think one thing, especially when someone has a new baby, is you want to help keep that brain off as much as possible. And so don't ask them, can I do something? Just do it. Like, just drop off the food that that they like. Just organize the meal train, organize the childcare train, which is a brilliant idea. Sit on the sofa with their baby so they can take a really long shower or take a really long nap. Just say, I'm here, I can help you, and take the thinking out of it. One thing that also came up is just also helping to make sure that the partner, if there is a partner involved, also has the support, so that that person, especially if they have a young baby, isn't kind of having their wheels turning about what their partner is doing or not doing, and if they've eaten and when was the last time they slept or took a shower as well. So checking in and having someone focus on their needs as well can be really, really helpful. Does anyone have any other suggestions that you'd like to name? Feel free. But those are ones that come to mind.
Great. Does anyone have one? You can think. All right, we might come back to that, okay? So if you got your thinking hats on, we'll get back to that. All right, so Kaleigh, how does the Gates Foundation work to support women and girls to sort of take charge of their own reproductive health?
So I think what we do is we really try to expand the choices that are available to women. The reality is, if there's women in here or people with uteruses that have used a contraceptive method, most of them kind of suck. I mean, you have side effects. You have bleeding, you have weight gain, you have acne, you have many different things. And so what we try to do is to expand the methods that are available to women. And we do that by looking at the current methods that are available and making them, increasing access to them to women around the world. So, our team is focused overseas in low and middle income countries. But we also do work to develop the contraceptive methods of the future. And so we have a team dedicated to contraceptive R&D that's looking at what are non-hormonal options that we can explore so that we can hopefully address some of those side effects. What are other options? Like one of the methods that's actually on display is a microneedle patch. So you would put it on like a Band-Aid and then you would take it off. And you would be covered for a month for contraception. And like the beauty of that is no one would ever know that you did that. So that's another piece that we really look at is it's meeting her physical needs, but also meeting her needs in terms of safety. If her husband or her family might not agree with her using contraception, looking at her emotional health. So looking at things like how hormones are impacting her mental health, and how non-hormonal methods could better address her needs. So really just trying to better understand what women want, what they desire, and how we can meet those needs and desires.
Okay, Angela. So here we are, we're still thinking about this pandemic because it's really still here, right? And so one of the things that it showed us was how important care is to daily life. Right, and it highlighted the excessive burden that women experience around caregiving. So I'd love it if you could talk a little bit about how women, either individually or communally, have responded to this burden.
Sure. I mean, I see it. The thing that gives me the most hope is the stuff that I saw happening on the individual and community level, which is that when people couldn't send their kids to school or to after-school centers or anything like that, we started forming pods. And to me, that's a really beautiful way of acknowledging, I can't do this alone. This is too much. And so that sort of interdependence and relying on community, because in America, it's a very, you're kind of on your own, and we have a very individual mindset. The nuclear family is how you do things. And, around the world for centuries, people raised children and made kin communally. And the home was not the place that women and mothers, it was not just their territory, and it wasn't on men to go out and like work and make money. And so remembering that, because the way we're living in America now is very historically, it's pretty recent, and it's pretty inhumane and isolating. And so I think like seeing that and getting together and people forming families in that way and community in that way. The other thing that I saw though was, there was a lot of outrage. And, part of why I wrote my book when I did was I really felt like the care system in America, many of us have known for a long time. It's sort of like logistical Jenga that's like held together with safety pins and rubber bands. And you just take one piece away, like a kid gets sick and you can't call into work and everything just falls apart. It's chaos. And it shouldn't be that way. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I think in the pandemic, when people couldn't bring their nannies into their homes or people couldn't send their kids to school, like I said, people were like, wait a second. A lot of women, a lot of privileged women who had been outsourcing a lot of that care work were like, wait, I've leaned in real hard and yet I'm still responsible for everything. And so there was definitely a moment where I think there was a lot of outrage. And I want to continue on in that vein because what we had before, and the pandemic is still going on, thank you, it was always unacceptable. But now more people, like we've sort of peeled the curtain back and everyone knows, like we can't go back to that. And so what I've also seen is, outcry and people lobbying and calling for legislators. And certain things have happened, like we did have direct stimulus payments for a while there. We had the advanced child tax credit, which was in line with my goal, which is just give people money so they don't have to be poor and things don't have to be hard. And that was a way of acknowledging that like having children, having families and caring for them is work, and you need financial support to do that. And I think our government has really failed us in the sense that we've tried to, we had an administration that ran on paid leave. None of those things came to pass. But I think the continued pressure that people have put on has led to, just last week, Biden signed executive orders with like 50 different directives to fund home care, to fund in-home child centers, all of these things, which we will see, how well that happens, but none of those things happen without people speaking up and making their care needs known and talking about care, not allowing it to be invisible and private. And I really think we have more to go, but I'm heartened. And I, for one, am never shutting up about this. And I know a lot of people who are not going to either. And so I see it happening in the individual level, and I do see, and I have been waiting for this moment because I've been feeling pretty upset about it for a long time, but I am seeing that's the start of systemic change and that acknowledgement that our government is listening to people who want, the majority of people in America, 8 out of 10 voters, want funded care policies, and that's, at that rate, we're not talking about political divides. We're talking about, a caring majority of people. And it's up to us to keep talking about it and keep that pressure up so that we can see the changes that we need from the top down. Because we're already out here doing the most in our daily lives.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with you. All right.
Okay.
All right. No, you're great. So a while ago, I saw this great clip of you, and you were on the Daily Show talking to Trevor Noah.
I was.
So okay, right. Go ahead. So please tell us about Trevor Noah, please.
I don't really have a thing with celebrities. I really don't, except for like NBA basketball players. But Trevor Noah was like 1,000 times more handsome, charming, and thoughtful than I could have ever anticipated. I left that studio with my publicist. I was like, well, he just deserves everything he has. What a smart guy. What a thoughtful man. He read my book. He was wonderful. And he actually really understands that mothering and caregiving is like a public health intervention that is a way of it's an investment in the health of our society down the road. He was spectacular. I have nothing bad to say about Trevor. Only good things.
All right there. Great. Okay, so related to that, so you were talking to him about how labor and caregiving are often undervalued. So why do you think, you've already been touching on it a little bit. So tell us a little bit more about why you think society undervalues labor and caregiving.
Yeah, in America specifically, it's because it's done by Black and brown women. It's a direct legacy of American slavery. The home has always been a workplace for Black women. And the wealth of this country was built on the backs of enslaved people who nursed our babies, cooked our food, cooked the food, and did all of that. And so now, enslaved people were freed. Second wave feminism in the 1960s, like Betty Friedan, was women find meaning outside of the home at work, which was great for a lot of people, but it did not solve the issue of who's doing domestic work and labor and childcare. And so what happened was we hired Black and brown women to do it for very low wages. And that's the bottom line. The truth is that we in this country are very comfortable seeing Black and brown women as being less human, less valuable. We perpetuate a myth that domestic labor and care is unskilled, which I can tell you right now, that is not unskilled work. That's happening right there. We do that to justify paying lower wages. And, childcare workers are 3 times more likely to live in poverty than any other worker in America. And that's shameful. And that's that is our shameful history that we haven't fully reckoned with.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Mercedes, we're just gonna kind of dovetail into this a little bit. So, in earlier conversations, you've described how important it is to support the birthing process for communities of color. So if you could talk a little bit more about why it is important. You can be about why it's important to you or why it's important.
Well, we've just been disregarded. So, One thing I would definitely say as far as an in-house thing, and I mean in-house as far as the family, the culture of birth, the culture of Black women, brown women, Indigenous women being able to care for themselves and care for their babies is so downplayed because of all of the outside forces. Meaning, now, back in the day, we used to have our granny midwives, and the granny midwives would take care of the birthing person, the woman, but that would extend out to the family, because sometimes, men are a little stubborn, didn't want to go in, and then mama would still end up having to take care of everybody. And once that midwives were kicked out of the picture and birth was put into the hospital, it is now oftentimes seen as the only gold standard. If a Black or brown person becomes pregnant, you go to the hospital. That's where you have a baby, point blank and period. If the doctor doesn't treat you that great, well, at least you're having your baby over there. At least that's grade A, like you're gonna be safe, no issues. And nursing a baby, I've known many families now where we go to nurse the baby, or we're talking about doing extended breastfeeding for a year, 2 years. You're going to spoil that baby. Just give the baby formula. That's what you need to do. Don't that's so sexual. Why would you give the baby your breast? We've been unfortunately brainwashed by the system too often, too many times, as far as what's best for us. And for me, that's just really, it's disheartening to see that, to experience that, to be a part of that, and having to try to break down a lot of the myths that are involved with being able to care for ourselves in pregnancy, and also being able to speak up and speak out. That is one of my favorite things, is when I am dealing with families of color and they're like, I would like to do this. Great. Like there's no little protocol says this. There may be a few things that, I'm like, well, here are some of the options, or why is it that you would like to do that? Like, teach me something, because I don't know everything, I know, like, for a lotus birth, I'll give a quick little intro on lotus birth, but that is where someone has a baby and then they do not cut the cord. They just wait for the cord to release itself from the baby, which is a beautiful and very patient process. And also it's kind of nice because if you have a lot of people that want to grab at your baby, it kind of deters them from grabbing at your baby. But I didn't know anything about lotus birth, and it was one of my, families of color that taught me about that. And instead of being like, well, not cut the cord, I was like, oh, well, teach me about that. I don't know, And likewise, like if I have a family that I have grandparents in with me on the visit, and we're talking about breastfeeding, or we're talking about having a birth unmedicated because that is their goal, that's not mine, I'm just there to support. And they're like, well, that's ridiculous. I had my baby and, I was in the hospital, I got my epidural, blah, blah, blah. And that's a great teaching moment. That's a great time to start bringing back where we were at when we were setting the gold standards as far as having a baby at home and having our grand midwife and having her, just what we were doing before the industrial part of birth came in and knocked everybody out. I feel like I'm going off to the side.
I wanted to add one thing that it reminded me, because when I researched my first book, I learned that 50% of babies born like around the turn of the 20th century they were guided by midwives. And that those midwives were mostly Black women and immigrants. It was very much a working women's job. And then when, obstetrics and gynecology sort of came in, there was an active movement to discredit midwives. And so I think that that's like part of the history that people don't really understand. Like midwives and women of color and working women they had it, like it was being handled. And, there's many great things come with progress, but also like we have to talk about the cost and at what cost these things happened.
Yeah, so bringing that back. I want to bring that back because we've just been inundated with all of this. This is how you should do it when we knew how to do it. So that's why it's important.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Just another individual question for each one of you. So, Dila, we talk about working with these communities and helping provide this birthing care. Like, what has that taught you, like working with these individuals?
It's actually really connected to what Mercedes and Angela were talking about, which is there is an innate level of wisdom about what people within their community need and what a healthy, positive birth experience and childhood experience can be like. And the important thing is to lift that up and the instincts that are there up so that some of those traditional practices can continue. And it really spans so many different cultures and communities. And you talked about Black midwives, but it also, we work a lot with the Somali community. And in the Somali culture, there are many really age-old, tested things to do for someone who just gave birth, traditions that you follow immediately postpartum, traditions that you use to welcome the baby, the ways that you invite other family members in, the way that you rest after having a baby and you stay at home in your bed for a period of time, which makes logical sense. It's not about whether or not you can walk and do work in a week. It's about you just went through a major abdominal and surgery or life event, and it's okay to rest. And honoring those traditions and recognizing that they actually do have science behind them in the sense that they're validated by thousands of years of history. And also, we work a lot with the Latinx community, and also in the Latinx community, there's so many different traditions that we often take for granted, I think, in Western culture, but baby wearing. There's a lot of baby wearing in this exhibit. There's baby Bjorns, there's ergos. We all know there's like 1,000 different kinds of baby wearing techniques. But some of the oldest ones were a rebozo, which is like the equivalent of like a large piece of fabric that's wrapped around to hold a baby tight. And what we know, science later, flash forward thousands of years, figured out is that skin to skin contact and that close connection helps with attachment, it helps with circulation for the baby, it helps with sleep, it helps with so many other things. Another thing in this exhibit, which I'm particularly proud of, is there's a cradle board, which is donated by someone and her son, who was the person who was in the cradle board. That is an indigenous, time-honored technique of caring and wearing babies. And also, some babies love them so much they'll stay in them until they're 10 years old because, again, it's that comfort of being held close. So it's going back to the traditional wisdom and honoring it and seeing the science and the beauty and the love behind those traditions. And we all have them.
Fantastic. All right, Kaleigh. So, these things are all flowing together so beautifully. So, you're talking a little bit about the exhibition here and some of the things that are there. And so, we're seeing all of these objects. There's like 200 pieces here, right, that show us progress around parenting and giving birth to children. So, I know you don't have like a crystal ball, but let's say that, oh, wow, one just showed up right here. Okay, and you could look in this crystal ball, and this has all these objects. They show us sort of a progression of how things have changed. I wonder if you looked in this crystal ball, what you think might be there that could be in this exhibit in the future. Some object, something.
So I think what I get really excited about, and this is specific to contraception, but is the ability to use technology. I think at this point, we're already seeing women tracking their cycles using apps. I think that's incredibly powerful, just understanding what's happening with your body. And flashing forward, I think using technology potentially, to contracept. So we're actually working on a device that you could have inserted and you would be able to turn it on and off potentially. And, this is very far in the future. It's very early stages, but thinking about Like if you could have your cell phone, and this would have all sorts of privacy issues. So again, it needs a lot of work, it needs to be figured out, but you could turn it on and off. When you're ready to have a baby, you could turn off your contraceptive, and then when you're ready to turn it back on, when you're ready to have contraception again, when you don't want to get pregnant, you could turn it back on. So thinking about things like that, of kind of how we're looking to the future. And again, hopefully just better meeting women's needs. I mean, we need to understand what kind of blows my mind. What I hope I see in the future is understanding like sexual pleasure and what that is, and how we can better understand it, better help people reach sexual pleasure. Like right now, a lot of the work that we do at the foundation, it's very science, and it's very, we're going to give you this contraception to stop you from getting pregnant. But what if we had a contraceptive that also felt really great and meant that sex felt better? Like that's what I want to see in the future. Yeah. Because that's like the true innovations. It's not just about not getting pregnant, but it's about better meeting the full reproductive needs of women and men and people.
Fantastic. Okay, we're talking about this exhibition. So one of the things which we've asked the advisors to do is to identify an object and talk a little bit about it. So they've all chosen something. So we're going to have them speak about their objects. So Angela, we're going to start with you.
Well, I cheated and I picked two, and they let me. So the first one is the menstrual cup, which is not something that I really knew about until maybe like 10 or 15 years ago. And I have fully converted to the menstrual cup, and I love it because it's reusable. It's sustainable, I think environmentally, it's better sustainably. It's also financially more sustainable. They're very affordable, and you just reuse them and clean them and sanitize them, and I love it so much. And then the self-care mirror, I want to spend a little more time on that, because I think I was in my 30s before I really knew what I looked like. And I think so many of us, if we don't talk about it, and if you can't see it, then you don't talk about it. And I really believe that silence is not inherently bad, but it is a place where shame often flourishes. And I had a lot of mixed feelings and shame and a lot of things tied up in this area of my body that I didn't really know a whole lot about. And as Kaleigh was talking about, I think it definitely delayed my full understanding of myself and my full experience of pleasure. So I got this self-care mirror. It's made by a company called Misa, and you can place it in between your thighs. It can also sit on the floor and has a little light. And I got it, and I use it, but I got it for my children mainly, because I want them to know from a very early age what all of their parts are called, and that we can talk about it. And I have to tell you that, so my oldest daughter is a little more reserved, and so I got it kind of mainly for her, so she knew it was there, and she's like, okay, I know the drawer that it's in, okay. But my youngest daughter, who's 5, is she's all about it. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I heard they were supposed to be getting ready for bed, and there was this sort of shrieking and yelling, and I was like, what is going on? And they were like, we're using the mirror. And I was like, oh my God. And my husband was like, stay calm, don't go running up there. But anyway, so I went up there all, very cool, oh, hey, what's going on? And the little one who had previously, we had a few sessions with the mirror, and she goes, I'm just showing, Noli is her sister's name, she goes, I'm just showing Noli my gumball. And then she was just exploring, and they were talking about it. And my older daughter had said that her vulva had been a little bit irritated, and she looked, and there was some white stuff around it. And I was like, oh, I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to take a look, because that sounds like something could be going on. And she was like, well, I looked, and I'm pretty sure it was just old toilet paper. And I was like, oh, well, that's real, that happens. And anyway, but we had I never had a conversation like that with my parents. I never could imagine having a conversation like that with my mother. And so all because of this mirror, I feel like I know that they know, and it was old toilet paper, and everything was fine. We rinsed it out, and I just felt like she knows that she can deal with those things herself. She also knows that she can call me into doing that, and it can also be fun and funny, and it's just part of our bodies, and it's just part of everyday life. And I love the Misa self-care mirror.
All right.
I know this isn't like sponsored product placement, but I really do love the mirror.
Okay, Dila.
You're going to make me follow that.
Sorry, I didn't choose.
Oh, well, anyway, let's just say that I have a 12-year-old daughter, and she was just like, I know. We've been talking about this stuff like since I was like 5. So I'm pretty sure our daughters could have a very fluent conversation about this stuff. So I chose the C-section drape, which is a bit of an unusual choice for me to make. So one of the things that Open Arms really try to do is to actually improve birth outcomes and also infant health outcomes for our families. So one of the things we're proud of is that we can reduce preterm births by half. And we also have a 96% breastfeeding rate at 6 months, which is breastfeeding, nursing, chest feeding rate at 6 months, which we're really proud of. And we also reduce C-sections, which is a very complicated, challenging thing to do because our families are also higher risk. So not all of that is something that a doula or a birth worker has in their control. And there are times where a C-section is what needs to happen. It saves lives, it's medically necessary. In the birth of my own daughter, with the doula, knowing everything that I had, there was that moment where it was time for her to be born, and it was going to be by C-section. So what the C-section drape does is that it's a very simple way of allowing someone still to be present in some shape or form for the birth of their baby. So the drape separates the person's head when they're lying down from the surgery, which is a major abdominal surgery that's taking place on the other side of that drape. And often, especially pre-COVID, if you're able to have your partner with you, your partner is there on the other side of the drape with you, holding your hand, and there's a little space that is cut out where you can look and see what's happening. And also if there's a doula, the doula is also on the other side of the drape and sometimes checking every once in a while to see what's happening on the other side. So when the baby is born and is brought to you, it allows some space and privacy also for that moment, which is a really unique, special moment that only happens once in your life where you get to meet your baby for the first time. And so for me, even though we try very hard to prevent C-sections, the fact that this exists, I think, makes it a more humane experience.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, Mercedes.
I chose the birth stool. I love the birth stool. It's been around for ages. It's been tested, proven, it's true. It's awesome. It does look like a toilet or a squatty potty. I feel like it looks more like a squatty potty than a toilet. But I love upright birth. Upright birth is just so wonderful because you're able to have gravity on your side, and sitting on a birth stool is so similar to sitting on a toilet. And we've been trained from very young age that that is where we release things. And so oftentimes when I have families that are using the birth stool, I would say most of the time we're getting to that point where people are kind of tired and they just need that extra support. And being on the birth stool is able to give that to them. Or if we have a placenta that might be a little bit sticky, then a birth stool is like, it's a great spot to go to instead of having to put hands in places that I don't necessarily want to put my hand in. Also, the birth stool, it's all over the world. They've had it in Africa. They still have it all over in Africa. They have it in all of the Americas. It's been, dated back all the way in Egypt, so does not matter who you are, you have an opportunity to use this, from high status, queens, kings, well, not kings, at least not back then, all the way to empresses, and people with lower means. Like, it just helps everybody. And the other thing that I really enjoy about the birth stool is that it's one of those tools that it's been adapted so many different ways, so we have ones that look like this and they're easy to take around to home births where the legs actually screw off. We have ones that are just made out of plastic. I had a family one time, the dad made one. He was like, a birth stool is so helpful from what you're saying. Like, how about I make one? So he like measured out her butt. It was fantastic. It was and after she christened the birth stool, they actually gave it to me for another family. So it was really sweet. But, you know, it's just one of those tools that I'm super grateful for in a few situations where babies just were taking their sweet time, the scenic route to come out. And, you know, I had people that were like, I really want to have my birth here in this particular place. And it helped us stay there. It helped us stay where they wanted to be because they had that extra like, okay, take a pause. I can do this. And then, you know, the baby was also able to do more mechanics because they were able to relax their pelvic floor muscles, which that's really awesome for too. So that's why I chose the birth.
Awesome. All right, Kaleigh.
Thanks. So I chose well, I chose an ovulation strip. And to me, I got a little personal as I was thinking about the object that I wanted to choose. To me, it really represents how little I knew about my body and reproduction. You know, I have dedicated my career to contraception and to helping people not get pregnant. It's all I had thought about was, you know, people tell you just don't get pregnant. And then when it came time for me to get pregnant, I struggled. I used many ovulation strips to try to determine that exact time to conceive. You know, everyone tells you when to have sex so that you can do it exactly perfectly and make it happen for you. And for me, it didn't. I ended up needing to do IVF to get pregnant. And so this represents my own journey and my struggle. And also the fact that infertility is kind of missing from this exhibit. I think it's often missing from these discussions. And so I just would bring that. And we have to think about, it's not just about fertility and motherhood, but it's also about infertility and helping people understand their reproductive health and how to get pregnant when they want to.
Great. All right. Ooh, we've covered a lot here. That was brilliant. Okay, so now we're going to move into another portion of our program, and we're going to move into a Q&A. And so we're going to invite the audience, if you have questions, to let us know what they are, and we'll see if what our panelists can do around answering them. And we're going to have people in the audience ask questions as well as virtually. All right. And so as we prepare for this Q&A, I want to tell us that we also have a short activity. It's called a Menti poll. So you may not be familiar with this, but Menti is an online resource that allows people to pose a question, and then you get responses to the question, and the responses can form a word cloud, which you can see visually. All right, so you can answer the question by following a QR code. There it is right there. And here's our question. What comes to mind when you hear the word caregiving? What comes to mind when you hear the word caregiving? Okay, so you can use that QR code. People can do it at home as well. You should be able to see it there. And you can reply to that question, and then we will see responses a little bit later. So now here we are at the audience Q&A. So I wonder if there's anyone here in this audience in person who might have a question. If you do, you can raise your hand. We'll have someone come around with a microphone, and you can speak your question out loud. All right, so people are coming around.
Hi, thank you very much. I want to say thank you to Angela, not just for all the work that you do, but for inventing the corn cheese ice cream, which is fantastic. Much of this conversation, I think, is centered and often does center on women. And the women that I know in my life, around caregiving especially, are frequently, I think, trying to maximize every second. And there's this constant buzz of, if only I could just fit all the pieces together, if I could be more efficient, if I could just, and I feel often like sometimes we are tinkering around the edges of these large structural challenges. My question to you and to everyone is, how do we bring men into this conversation? I would not be where I am in my career without my husband, who's quit his job to be a stay-at-home father. And I just wonder, where do men show up in these conversations, and do you see them showing up?
I will totally admit that I have this bias where I'm like, I don't think about men. I just don't. I totally agree with you, and I think there are people who are doing like, I'm just gonna own up to being like, maybe it's a shortcoming. I just like don't spend my time thinking about men that much. I mean, I do think like it is. I mean, I think it's on men, right? Like I think that there are really quality men, right? Like I also, benefit from a wonderful spouse and partner. I was doing an interview with a married couple who, it's a lot of financial stuff, but anyway, he was saying like, he's like, I get jealous when I see these, these robust Facebook groups of like mothers, and he was like, what can men, like, can we have that? I'm like someone didn't make that for them. Like mothers made that. And so I think that there's, encouraging and supporting men to like speak out and do all of the things that we've been doing. Like we, again, like get to where we are because we have chosen to make noise about it and to speak about it. I mean, I'm very open to suggestion here. I just think it's kind of like, it's like the problem with men is some people put a lot of really careful thought into that. I worked with a woman named Catherine Goldstein, who has a wonderful newsletter called The Double Shift. We co-hosted a podcast, and she was always like, how do we make this a men's issue? And I was like, you're kind of on your own for that one. Like, I don't feel called to think about increasing men's participation. I think men should feel called to do that. But that's me. I'm open to hearing from other people on this.
I can say, to me, it starts at the very, very, very beginning. Before there's a baby, before there's even a pregnancy. When I can say, I saw this personally when I was a doula. I worked with East African families. And in the case of one family, it was an Ethiopian woman. It was her first birth in the United States. She didn't speak any English. She had only been in the United States, I think, for 3 months. Her husband had been here longer. And it was his first child. And they were giving birth in a hospital. And he was the first person in his entire family to ever see a baby being born. Because in Ethiopia, culturally, the practice is that men are not allowed in the room and they're not allowed in the health facilities to be in the room, and they tend to wait. And then the baby's brought out to them. And he decided to stay and be there. And he was there. He saw it all. And I really think that it profoundly changed the respect that he had for his partner and understanding of what she went through emotionally and physically in that moment, and the bond that he had with the baby that was born. And so I do think it is possible to bring men or people who identify as men into the conversation, or partners. And it begins early. And it also begins with those of us who mother, if we have boys in our life, beginning with the examples of like showing them that they can be caregivers when they're 5 or 6, and rewarding that behavior, not making it seem exceptional, that they're interested in things like that. I know plenty of incredibly loving, nurturing people who identify as men in my life. And I think it has a lot to do with the people that raise them.
Can I answer?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'll just say a little bit about me and sort of why I was really interested in this program, this panel. It's because I grew up on the East Coast, and my mother raised kids. We had a daycare center in the basement of our home. So since the time I was like 6 years old, there have always been kids around. Right, so I grew up with sometimes like 5, 6, 7 kids crawling on me while I did my homework. I used to make cakes with them. I used to carve pumpkins with them. So I did those things. I had interactions with them. But I also learned how to change a diaper. I also learned how to carry a baby. I also learned how to feed babies. I learned how to do all these things with babies. So I have always been comfortable around kids. I love kids, right? But I've realized that, here I am presenting man, that many of the other men that I know are like, sometimes they don't even want to be around kids, right? They don't want to be around kids. They don't want to hear about kids. They don't want to know about kids. Ooh, kids are scary. How do you hold that thing? What am I going to do? Right? And so I realized that one of the things I could do was just to be around kids and show how easy it is to be with a young person and what a gift they are and how much they teach you. Like, I was surprised how much I learned from kids, just saying things, being so observant. So I think one of the things to do is, you kind of alluded to it, is that it really is about people who look like me talking to other people who might look like me about what it is to help and support people and kids and families. So I think that's part of the work. I mean, really, my mother worked hard all day long. And then she had to feed us, right? After she fed everyone else's kids. So I learned to cook, right? My mother was like, you need to learn how to cook. And I was like, okay, you're right, I will. And so I did. And now that's what I do, is I also feed people, because that's what I learned about caregiving, right? So I think really that men can teach men about caregiving. And I think it's an important thing to happen. So. Okay, I'm not sure if we have any questions virtually. Okay, we're going to go to a virtual question, then we're going to come back here to the in-person audience.
Okay, from the virtual audience, can you speak to the universal challenges or differences in mental health around motherhood and care, especially in different countries and cultures?
I feel like we're all dealing with some type of mental health situation.
I mean, we've all been through a collective trauma. Yeah. So, I mean,
and have been given no real space to grieve.
Yeah.
As far as speaking to it, I feel like I would say definitely in Washington State. I feel like with PSI, we've definitely been trying to help more providers learning more about mental health, antenatally, in pregnancy, and postpartum. There are so many fine lines when it comes to mental health, because we're still so quiet about it. Having a hard day compared to having many hard days and not really knowing who to reach out to, even when you're having a care provider, being like, yeah, I was super stressed out yesterday, and then I was also stressed out the last week, and oh, is that a problem? Kind of thing. And being a care provider for most of the household, especially if you're a woman, you're just kind of used to having to take that on and not really making it a big deal, I guess you could say. And then also having some care providers that are just following the, EPDS or the mental health score, just following that instead of looking at someone, and even though they scored perfectly, so being like, are you really okay? Even though you said you're not suicidal, even though you said you're not anxious, even though, like, really being able to learn your families and your clients that you're working with and being like, no, I actually see something, let's talk about it. Yeah.
Also, you said PSI?
Postpartum Support International.
Thank you. Great. All right, we had someone who had, the microphone, yes, thank you. Your question, please.
Yeah, so my question is about some of the emotional work that goes into caregiving. I think there's a lot of attention on meeting children's needs as far as feeding them, changing diapers and stuff. And I think the thing that I'm finding daunting about parenthood is teaching like self-regulation and some of that. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are, if you have resources or just experiences that you can share about how, to approach that work. Thank you.
Thank you.
So actually, the University of Washington is known for its research on infant mental health and has a lot of resources at the University of Washington. Some of them are free, and some of them are also free through the community and through, say, Public Health, Seattle King County, and are available to others that are really related to like self-regulation for children, for toddlers, but also one of the first steps is just even understanding how to understand child development and what are appropriate milestones at different ages. And, recognizing that the majority of someone's brain is really growing in those first 2 years and some of those milestones. So some of it starts, I think, with just having an understanding of how baby is growing in those milestones, and then thinking about what are activities that you can do that help with self-regulation. And really, because they're time honored, like I was saying earlier, most of them are free. There are things like storytelling, reading, playtime. What's it called? Back. I'm forgetting the word when you keep a baby. Tummy time. Sorry. 12-year-old. Anyway, it was a while ago. Things like that, but also just as for older babies and toddlers and children about like healthy boundaries, respect, healthy communication. There are resources available actually locally about that, and I can help share some of those after and point you towards them.
Great, thank you.
I was just going to say that I realize that I have to regulate myself often before I can step in with my child. And so that's work that I have been doing about figuring out it's okay to like step away, right? Like no child is going to cry themselves to death, right? Like, so sometimes, but I have to tell myself that, like I'm triggered to think like this is a really big deal, and I go into a mode of reacting. I'm not in any way a parenting expert, just letting you know this. But sometimes what's been really helpful for me is I am much more able to help my child when I am not acting from a place of like, I'm in a panic about how to make this happen, right? I have calmed myself and entered the situation like fully as the adult, right? And, to be totally honest, Dr. Becky, if you follow Dr. Becky's Instagram account, Dr. Becky is really great at this. Dr. Becky has helped me a lot, I have to be honest. I'm not like a Dr. Becky stan, but I think that she has some ways of approaching things and speaking to children in a calming manner that I find very helpful. And there's also a parenting educator on Instagram that I love, because I'm giving you shortcuts here. This is not like, you can go to Dila for quality information. I'm gonna tell you who to follow on Instagram. But there's a parenting educator, her name is Destiny Ann, and she's great. I'm telling you, these two, like the two of them, there's a balance, right? And you should take what works for you. But there is like really accessible reminders that it starts with you, right? And you don't have to just be reacting specifically to what your child is doing. Like you can enter in a calm and centered place, and giving yourself that time to do that, I think, is really important.
Thank you. All right. We've got quite a few hands here in the audience. Yes, how about here in the back?
Okay. Just, that's very interesting, because this morning I was reading about this week is National Infertility Awareness Week. So I just want to, invite everybody and kind of shout out what you were saying, because sometimes we forget about that. And my question is related to mental health and grief and loss. What would be your most powerful tools or strategies to work with a mom and a dad that they just have a recent loss, or after so many tries just are struggling with it? There is a lot of sense of power in that woman when they are even trying, or so it's a lot of fear. It's a lot of fear, even to bring a child right now. They're, after all this collective trauma after everything that we just have experienced. It's a lot of fear just to have a baby in our house, just to see it, just how that baby is gonna become totally dependent of us. So what would be your thoughts about that? Thank you.
I think the first step is being okay with mourning. That's a really big step. Support groups are really awesome. If you don't want to be in a space with strangers, hopefully having trusted family that won't just, try to give you a bunch of information or, kind of thing, to be able to be like, I need you today. Can you just sit with me on the phone for 5 minutes? Just let me cry. Just let me say a few things about how I'm feeling, kind of thing. Journals have kind of gone out. They're not super popular as they were, but I think it's really wonderful when you can write out, kind of all the hopes and wishes and even gratefulness for the time that you had your kiddo with you or your pregnancy with you, and laying that to rest in a way that feels right to you. Whether that's having an altar in your home, or maybe it's, burning that piece of paper, not in a way that it's like to forget, because that's not what we're trying to do here, but it's more like, okay, I'm gonna let you go on and be wherever you would like to be as far as this memory that I have, kind of thing, as you're processing. But those are things that I think about and things I've talked about with families, support groups, leaning in on family and or friends, really allowing yourself to mourn. And yes, it is very scary having another pregnancy or attempting to have another pregnancy or fighting to have another pregnancy after that. And really just allowing yourself to have those emotions too, because when we fight them, that's when they just come back so much stronger. They just come back so much stronger. So that's usually what I talk about.
Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you for the question. And we've had a fantastic conversation, and somehow we have come to the end of our time together. But hopefully, even though we're at the end of this program, this is not the end of our understanding of how important care is in our lives and raising families. So I want to let you know that you can learn more about programs here and about the exhibit by following the Discovery Center on social media at Discover Gates. And we have slides here that talk about some of our upcoming programs, including, okay. That's still the Menti thing up there. So we have some upcoming programs. On May 4th, we have an event called Deconstructing Karen, where people will be learning about racism and having really broad conversations about it. And again, you can find out more about the programs on the Discovery Center website. Also, we have a survey. Again, another QR code. You can just take a picture of that, and if you apply to the survey, that would be really great. It really helps us find out what you're interested in and teaches us about how to make our programs better. I want to thank our partner organizations. We have a group that's right up the stairs here. If you're here in person, Blackberry. Hello, Blackberry, up there, up the stairs. Hey, hello. We also want to thank Open Arms Perinatal Services, West Side Baby, Parent Map, yes, the table right back there behind the audience, and also Nurture Northwest. And I want to thank our panelists who have been fantastic. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Angela, Mercedes, Dila, Kaleigh, thank you. Thank you for just your heartfelt answers. It's been beautiful. And I also want to thank you all for being here and for bringing your hearts and your attention to this issue. It has been a joy to be here to do this program. This exhibition is fantastic. We're going to be here for another 30 minutes. Please, please take a little stroll through, see things. And also, I hope I'm not saying this out of turn. Wait, hold on a second. If people come up to talk to you. Oh, yeah. Okay, and so I didn't check with them first. So I just wanted to say that you can also ask any of them a question, walk up, talk to them after the program. All right. So I just wanted to check in with them about that. Before I didn't want to volunteer them what to do, you know what I mean?
Also, I wanted to jump in with a quick little shout out, which is that I think of it as your injectable, but it's about halfway up the ramp, like on the right where the objects are, but it's about halfway up. So if you want to see Kaleigh's injectable, that's where that is. If you want to make a beeline for it, yeah.
All right, and again, my name is Rosette Royale. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.